food, starvation, the recipe. People subdued when the people you trust got it in for you. Deceit is the word of the day, and every clue, don't let it go. It's from the days of old. Time is up, but some still do not know. Can I make up my mind? Is it worth the dime? Do I have to take a minute just to make it mine? Life's never fair, but don't listen to the TV. Go out and take a listen to the streets with the people in the slums and the homeless bums with degrees and degrees sitting under a tree. It's not easy in the world for the poor man, the one that brought you to reality. See, they don't want you to know about the black sheep, leaving 7 rows to the 12 families all around the globe with an ancient code. Is it really asking a lot to say a death old? Cause we sitting on the earth looking back at extinct, and I'm standing on some ground that's about to sink. I ain't scared for a minute, I ain't about to blink, but I documented for the world what I see and think. Feel we on the call and up and we on the break. All Congress gonna do is waste paper and ink. Vote or die, you voted and you'll die. You can have it both ways, can't say it's a lie. You can march all you want, but they playing you wrong. They only understand war, it's the same old song. They want war, all they really want is a war. Diversionary tactic to make the big score. The diamonds in the morning, you know they want more, but they wanna keep you low, so they manifest the war. War, all they really want is a war. Diversionary tactic to make the big score. The diamonds in the morning, you know they want more, but they wanna keep you low, so they manifest the war. Like a lotus coming out of the mud with colors, I create envy in those with power but jealous. I unify the poor with my song, the hell with the others. Descended the way they treat indigenous brothers. Cause I understand we link forever. They try to hate us even though that we keep it together. I'm not talking about controlling the air or the weather. I'm talking about maintaining the truth, the high endeavor. A rebel drops bombs in the midst of trouble. The free world counterattack and now there's double. But nature gets the shit in the way to settle. If you stop the machines for a minute you might hear, but they won't cause the TV's whisper in the ear. And capitalism has eyes that don't tear, and they cloud up and get crazy and won't stare. And like an ab, it's hard to get an ass to listen. Living like this is like living in prison. It's hard to keep hope when you're living in prison. The spiritual thoughts, so yes, the mental prison. The outside, yes, it's got to get through. Something's gotta die, so something here can live. Your life is nothing if you got nothing to give. Keeping the spiritual, yes, disguised as religion. Controlling your mind, the mental prison. They want war, all they really want is a war. Diversionary tactic to make the big score. The diamonds in the morning, you know they want more, but they wanna keep you low, so they manifest the war. War, all they really want is a war. Diversionary tactic to make the big score. Yeah, and what's up to everybody out there? Now, sorry about the delays. Yes, I've been a little, I would say, just on the touch of a small cold, over the last couple of days. And what I mean is I could kind of feel my energy was a little lower. The weather's been pretty bad over here. Actually, the last 3 days it's been changing. It's been very, very cold. We've had some serious dips in the temperature, right? So I'm not sure if that's what it was that kind of got me. But in order to bypass any real bad sickness, I decided to give myself a little bit of rest and try to rest up, because when I am at work, it could be for some serious hours at a time, depending on which day it is, Now, but now I'm back. I'm off. I got the day free. I'm a little rested, more rested than I would have been, especially if I went live yesterday. Now, I was about to, but I said, nah, let me just catch a couple of few extra hours of these and not push myself so much, right? Now, for those of you that don't know, I am from Washington, D.C., born and raised. I was born in Freedmen's Hospital. For those of you that are history buffs, that want to know what hospital that is today, you could go out there and research it. Freedmen's Hospital. And I'm one of the first generation Americans in Washington, D.C. to be born outside of segregation. Yes, my father and my parents were born in the time of segregation. My father was born in Washington, D.C. in segregation, where there's white and black water fountains, where there's white and black schools, where there's all this white and black neighborhoods, communities, this kind of things. Right? Entrances, white and black, places you're allowed to go, white and black, right? And both sides of my family is from the colonial period of the United States. So
I bring that perspective to the table when I'm speaking. However, as an adult man with my family, I live outside of the USA. And, it's not many in my family that actually have chosen to live outside of the US. It's not many in my family that have traveled as much as I have in their life as a younger person, right? I was lucky enough to travel. And so I was kind of hip to some nuances pretty early in my mid 20s, I would say. First of all, I've lived not just outside of the US, but outside of my hometown as a young individual looking for life and following my path in life, right? So New York is one of my second homes. I've lived in New York several different times growing up. So big up to everybody out of the NYC. Big up to everybody out of the US, north or south, because my family is a pretty big family. Now, they reside in pretty much every East Coast city that there is and more, even in the Midwest. So, and also, actually, to be honest with you, California also, Los Angeles also, I'm not going to put too much more out there about that, but in any case, I am rested, so I'm back, and that's kind of the perspective I bring on some things. I live in Copenhagen, Denmark, a place where we have universal health care, a place where we have universal education, a place where people bring home $1,000 more after paying their taxes and paying their expenses, utilities, rent, all of this stuff, compared to Americans. I'm talking about $1,000 every month more. So just some perspective. There's going to be people that hate that because they feel like the United States is the greatest, even when it's at its worst, or even when it's not best at all things. You get people like that from every country. By the way, I've learned that through traveling. You have a segment of every population that's just goddamn hard headed, you know, but you only find that out when you travel. I found it out by traveling firsthand, not from one country, but many different countries, right? Not even a country thing, even a state thing. Inside of every state in the U.S., there's a segment of the population that just goddamn hard headed. You see what I mean? And you want to avoid it, you go to Russia. There's a segment of the society that's goddamn hard headed, and there's a segment that, that can tilt. Everywhere in the world, no matter where you're going, there's political differences, and there's a group of people that's like, stay out, even though they haven't seen much of their own country, right? You have that. Even though they haven't seen much of the world, you have some that's like, stay out, no matter what. And they tend to be less educated people. I have to tell you, that's been my observation. They tend to be people that don't know the history of their own country. If you ask them, me, I'm a history buff, so I figured this shit out. I love European history. I love American history. I love global history. I love African history. I love Asian history. I love history, period, of mankind so far back that if you ask me a question, about human history 17,000 years ago, you know what I'm saying? Or let's say 11,000 years ago, if you want to have that conversation. But I'm not here for that. I'm here for the political. I'm here for the now. I'm here for today. And this is where we always start the program at. What's going on today to impact people's lives? And we're all the same. We all come from the same goddamn place. We're all human beings, right? And on top of that, we all deserve basics. I would hope everybody would like to agree that, hey, having an education might be a good thing. I would hope everyone could agree on that. Hence, bingo, you might be a human if you agree to that. I would hope everyone would believe, hey, everybody should have the right to, health care, right? Especially life saving health care. Bingo. If you're one of those people, I would think, yeah, you would be because you're a human being. That's just what a human experience is like. You get hurt, you can't work, you can't even find a job if you're hurt. How do you fill out a job application if you're hurt? By the way, I'm sick in the hospital, or by the way, I'm sick at home. I haven't been able to see a doctor in a few months, but I want this job. MAGA Mike Johnson, can you give an unable body man health care or a job? We know I'm just joking there because MAGA Mike Johnson doesn't even acknowledge people like that exist. But In any case, I'm back, y'all. Thanks for the wait. Thank you for the wait. Thanks for the patience. I hope everybody is doing well. But since I have been sick the last 2 days, yo, or under the weather, I want to thank everybody that attended the No Kings rally, the peaceful protest that happened in something like 22 different cities, 22,000 different cities across the country. 2,200 different cities across the country, if I'm right. 2,200, that's a lot of cities across the country. They say they estimate 7 million people attended these peaceful rallies, these peaceful shows of democracy. That is your First Amendment right to assemble, to express your speech, your ideas, your thoughts, right? And that is one of the hallmarks of being an American, American culture. I'm talking about the United States of America. And I would hope universal human, that's one of the hallmarks of living in a place that acknowledges human rights. You know what I'm saying? Freedom of expression, right? Now, but in the United States context, that was speaking up against a king, right? And a war for independence against that king, right? Also, taxation without representation. We will get into that because not all congressional members today get sworn in by Congress, by the House leaders. We've seen that, things that should harken back to our understanding of who we are as Americans. You know, that's what we're going to talk about, and that's what that march was about, the No Kings March. So big up to everybody that did that because, hey, you could be doing less if you wanted to. But I'm assuming a lot of people are like, damn, we better do something because, somebody said, oh, right, it's Eva. What, why, how? It's those classic WWs, although you probably noticed I didn't put a bunch of W, when, what, why, how, because, some of that is irrelevant. But what, how are you going to do it? The payment in terms of ICE. Now, I'm glad you brought that up because one of the things I wanted to go over is Trump has promised to find other ways to pay for ICE, their salaries. For those that didn't know, I've been reporting over the last couple of weeks pretty early on. I think I might have been the first vlogger, the first podcast to come straight out of the gate when this issue came up about the shutdown to point out that ICE would not be paid. Now, there's a lot of people that thought I was joking when I said that or thought that I didn't bother to research it when I said it. And those people were wrong. ICE has not been paid in the last 2 weeks. This might, if they don't, as of today, they normally get paid on the 15th. It's 2 weeks, every 2 week schedule. This is the second time they haven't gotten a check, you see, officially. Now, and it's not only ICE, but there's been some changes. There's been some updates. There's been some talk. There's been some governmental action. There's again been some governmental comments, some arranging, but still, ICE ain't getting paid yet. They haven't got paid yet. That's first, according to Trump's latest comment, that's first tomorrow. So we're still a little early. Hey, born in Norway. Hey, there you go. There you go. So du snakker norsk, where I felt. Okay, super. Yeah, good to have you here, Eva. Yeah. I hope it's Eva. but yeah. Yeah, Norway, for people that don't know, Norwegian and Danish are very similar. I mean, they're basically, I guess you could say, you can understand each other and you can write and speak. It's what, 80, 85, 90% the same? So many Norwegians or Danish people can understand Norwegian straight out the gate and vice versa, whereas the Swedish is maybe a little different. But yeah, big up to everybody that's listening from the Nordic countries. Also Finland, Estonia. I don't get a chance to talk about that, but people need to be aware about that part of the Scandinavian or the globe. But people need to be aware that Estonia and Finland, they're like on the front line of NATO right now regarding Putin's situation. And there has been a lot of things going on here, like these drone events, these drone incursions. And you don't know if they're attacks because you don't know if they're to spy. You don't know if they're to, see certain kind of infrastructure or if they were here to do other things. There was some reports that a ship was boarded. I think was it a Chinese vessel that was, or a Russian vessel that, yeah, a Russian vessel that was suspected of maybe being the launch pad for a lot of these drone incursions. But a lot of that is slowly and quietly being investigated. So, I guess more information will come, and I think it's probably a pretty sensitive area right now. So the Defense Department here in the Scandinavian and NATO, they're probably very hush hush about what they found out and things like that. So, but in any case, yeah, Vikings, yeah, Eric Klein, yeah, 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 Vikings, the Nordic lands, and others, not just Vikings, but you could also say Asa Troll, right? Polytheism, right? Yeah, that's a whole nother history. But if you know Scandinavian history, you know that the Scandinavian people were polytheists before they became Christian, and they still, are pretty proud about that part of their history, which is a big part, hence Greenland, Iceland, and these kind of adventures to the Americas also. So, and also their history in Europe. To be honest with you, Denmark used to possess a hell of a lot of what is known as the EU today, even half of England. So these are things you come to know if you dig into Scandinavian history. And I know a lot more, by the way. I don't want to get sidetracked because I see it's a lot of Scandinavians here. But I would say this. The last thing I would say on that is Andersen. Right? Hold on. No, Hans Jonathan. I'm sorry, Hans Jonathan. I said that wrong. People, if you never heard of Hans Jonathan, research him. A person of now Caribbean descent. Well, was first Scandinavian or first Caribbean, sold to his master back in the day. Here, brought to Denmark, fought in the war against, is it the British, right? And was promised his freedom, didn't get it, and then escaped and went back to St. Croix, and then founded as a family in Iceland today. So there's some connection points, and there's a few others. So Queen Mary, I would say that there's different points in history where you can see there's some cross histories of people, particularly regarding the Scandinavian and other colonial nations. But enough of that. Let's get into the business. And yeah, look at this. No one told us we'll get a stimulus check. I heard it, but don't believe it. Yeah, no. I put it to you this way: if it was happening, it would be in the front of the news. You know what I'm saying? That's my thought on it. Lee and Crane. If it was a stimulus check, I'd be into that too. But keep in mind, it's American citizens, federal taxpayer money. So this is not somebody giving us a damn thing. You know, First of all, most of the infrastructure that the United States government sits upon is paid for by, not most, but all is paid for by taxpayers, their ancestors. For example, all these buildings that, the Capitol, who paid for that? Our ancestors. You see what I mean? So that building they walk in every day is paid for by our ancestors' blood, sweat, and tears. The entire mall was built. National Mall, the White House, the monument, the Smithsonian Institute, all the libraries, all these history museums, paid for by our ancestors' blood, sweat, and tears. It wasn't given for free. It's actually money collected from the hard-working people of the United States of America. The Pentagon, for example, who built that? Our ancestors. So, when they talk about these stimulus checks, if it is or if it ain't, yo, I don't give a damn. It's still our money. No matter how you cut it, it's still our government that's meant to serve our people, no matter how you cut it. And if Donald Trump ain't cutting it and people ain't happy about how he's doing it, fuck Donald Trump. That's our right to say, and it's our right to express that. And I hope that he's kicked the hell out of power. And to be honest with you, if I had a chance, I'd piss on his grave. I mean, that's my thoughts about it. But and there's more. But in any case, let's get back to let me try to kick it off on what has been the latest fiascos, right? Well, first of all, before we go into the King's rally, because that looked great. By the matter of fact, forget that. let's just go right into this for a second. This is a little bit of that. I want to thank everyone who participated in this demonstration across the country. You guys are loved and respected. You did something that a lot of people just wouldn't do. You know what I'm saying? And but you also represented the people that couldn't for some reason. I was a little under the weather during the one they had here in Copenhagen. I heard it turned out really well, the one they had here in Copenhagen, but my work schedule and then this thing about not feeling 100% optimal. I was actually going to go speak there, but I just couldn't make it, so I decided to take some rest. But here's where it did happen.
The Republican Speaker of the House called these rallies hate America events. Boy, does he have it wrong. Millions of Americans are coming out today not because they hate America. We're here because we love America.
Yeah, now, yes, to just interject right there, I definitely do not hate my country. How could I hate the country my ancestors come from? And that's insulting. And I really think a lot of Americans need to listen to this Republican talking point. The idea that we could hate something our own ancestors built, like, excuse me, that is a crock of shit. And I'm starting to wonder the people that wrote this hate America thing, if they're even American themselves. I'm starting to wonder that, because look at the connection points between Trump, Putin, Elon Musk, Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel has 3 different passports. Elon Musk has 3 different passports. He's a citizen in 3 different countries. He's a naturalized, meaning he migrated and became a citizen just because he has a whole lot of money. Now, just think about the idea that these people Sean Hannity, second generation immigrant, he's a very serious right winger, doesn't seem to, always wants to invoke 1778, 1776, always talking about the founding fathers. He's a second generation immigrant, and I'm not down on immigrants. I believe the U.S. is pretty much a nation founded by immigrants and natives, period. That's what it is. But when I hear a lot of these right wingers, I hear stuff that almost sounds like, damn, maybe you ain't really American. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe you're confused about what being American really is factually, and they come up with these talking points like, and this is one of them, the idea that freedom of speech, that's the First Amendment. How could that be hating America? How could that be, I hate America, freedom of speech? How's that possible? But this is what they're saying. These are the Republican talking points, So I just want to make it clear. I love my country and everything pretty much that's good about it. But when I see something I don't like Donald Trump, I have the right to say, fuck you, Trump. And I have the right to say, I'll piss on your grave if I get a chance. You know what I mean? I have a right to say, you fucked up our country. I have a right to say, you're a greedy bastard. I have a right to say, all you're doing is taking advantage of poor white people, right? Taking advantage of their naivety and using it to hoard all their wealth. I have the right to say, you sold out the United States of America. I have the right to say, you conspire with Putin. It's my belief that you conspire with Putin, that is. I have the right to say, your wife is a damn immigrant. She can barely speak English correctly. Okay? How long has she been in the United States of America? Goddamn. For someone who's married to such an anti-American immigrant hater, because when they're talking about Mexicans are Americans. They just come from Mexico. A lot of them are natives, right? Many of them might be related to natives that were pushed out of the United States of America. They're Mexicans. That's right next to our country. So when you know the history of our country, that is what is to guide us. And it sounds like a lot of those talking points are written by people that don't actually know American history, don't actually know European history, don't actually know the history of the United States of America because they come up with crackpot ideas like this is a hate rally.
Speaker of the House called these rallies hate America events. Boy, does he have it wrong. Millions of Americans are coming out today not because they hate America. We're here because we love America. We're here because we're going to do everything we can to honor the sacrifices of millions of men and women who, over the last 250 years, fought and sometimes died to defend our democracy.
Exactly. And, my ancestors, my family members have died in all of these wars in the United States of America, War of Independence, Civil War, and every war after. So I actually come from a pretty American family. So I grew up in Washington, D.C. myself, born and raised. So I'm pretty comfortable with what my view of being American is. I stand on what my family sees America as, what I was taught in the nation's capital growing up, visiting the Smithsonian Institute anytime I want because it was for free as a kid, right? Going to see national monuments and researching them from school, taking school trips to the National Mall. So I'm pretty comfortable on knowing what American history is, who the founding fathers are, the people's lives who lost, Native Americans. Genocide was committed against Native Americans. I'm comfortable with understanding and having some respect for those people when I speak, right? And acknowledging their history, also acknowledging their descendants, who are a lot of them being treated very poorly by by ICE. You know what I mean? Because ICE doesn't care if you're a Native American. They don't care what your history was. They're looking for people that just basically sound Hispanic. But in any case, one other thing I wanted to point out about this is that here's the crazy part about this rally right here. And I want to thank Americans for doing that, for coming out. But check this out. If you actually try to play any parts of the No Kings rally on YouTube, it passes. You get to play it. It doesn't stop your monetization. It doesn't go against any hate rule policies, any rules of violence, any rules of these kind of things. But if you try to play anything about September 6th, right? If you try to play any of it, you can't monetize that video. Those videos go against YouTube's policy because they cite violence. If you show the insurrection that happened on that day at the Capitol building in January, right? If you show it, oh my God, your video gets flagged by YouTube. And why does it get flagged? It gets flagged because it's violent. That is what YouTube says it is. You see? That's what YouTube says it is. That the insurrection that happened at the Capitol, where they threatened to kill Mike Pence, to hang him publicly, where they threatened to kill Nancy Pelosi, right? Where they were out to overturn the election results, right? That is considered violent by YouTube. You see? So I found that out myself by playing some of it and just doing a comparison. Video gets flagged, for violence. And it's because of the September 6th videos. Now, this is not flagged.
Republican Speaker of the House.
So when they say anti-American, or when they say violent, or when they say anything like that, it's bullshit. It just doesn't work. It only works in a person's brain that is part of a cult, that is brainwashed, that doesn't see anything else,
Call these rallies hate America events. Boy, does he have it wrong.
Yeah, if it was a hate, anything hateful about it, YouTube would flag anything hateful, anything violent, anything, and that's just how it works. Now let's go to the next thing
We
here.
begin with a study in contrast. Here are Presidents George W. Bush and President Barack Obama when confronted by public opposition to their policies.
Democracy is a beautiful thing, and that people are allowed to express their opinion. And I welcome people's right.
Do me a favor, y'all. Click the like button. Don't forget to click the like button. I know a lot of people are entertained and just listening from their phones, maybe not watching, that tune in like that. But trust me, y'all, please click the like button and please take a second to subscribe. Let me roll this back a little bit. This is George W. Bush, right? And people being reminded, and other presidents, how they talked to Americans that disagreed with them.
Bush and President Barack Obama when confronted by public opposition to their policies.
Democracy.
Oh, right. Did I say September 6th? I'm in January 6th. Sorry about that. Yeah. The insurrection happened on Jan 6th. So sorry about that, y'all. I knew I was saying something wrong. But yeah, I do get September 11th and January 6th confused somehow. These are both big days, but in any case, here we go. Let's roll this back.
Presidents George W. Bush and President Barack Obama when confronted by public opposition to their policies.
Democracy is a beautiful thing, and that people are allowed to express their opinion. And I welcome people's right to say what they believe.
I've listened to you. I heard you. I heard you. I heard you. All right? Now, I've been respectful. I let you holler. All right? So nobody's removing you. I've heard you. But you've got to listen to me, too.
Believe me, no president likes to see the public turn out in large numbers against them and their agenda. But when it does happen, as you saw there, every one of them understands that it is the people's right.
Somebody said to me, look at this, you've been very careful not to show the rioting. No, actually, no, I haven't. And the thing about it is that everything that happened on January 6th, the thing that took up the most time was not Trump's speeches. It was the riot itself. It's actually them invading the place. It went on for hours and hours before Trump even decided, hey, should I ask people to stop? The riots on January 6th were the biggest part of the entire event. The speeches was like 1 hour. That's it. Him and Rudy Giuliani got up there and said something. I mean, that is not what the case is about the No Kings. If there was any disturbances, mathematically speaking, they were, so insignificant compared to what went on in its entirety, that you would have to be looking for a needle in a haystack to point those out. That's not the case when people cover Jan 6.
To exercise free speech and to criticize their elected leaders at the top of their lungs. And that very thing is what makes America great. That is what makes America America. It's what makes us special all around the world. Until right now. Donald Trump showed the world what he thinks of the American people by literally broadcasting an image of himself pouring feces all over America and the American people. The No Kings protests clearly getting deep under Donald Trump's skin over the weekend. But more importantly, the protests show the contours of a new opposition in America, one led by the people. According to the organizers, 7 million people came out to protest Donald Trump on Saturday.
Look, a MAGA supporter in the chat says this: must not believe your history books either, or science, or archaeology or biology, either king. Or maybe Jess is just pointing that out in irony. Yeah, but this is literally what people, MAGA supporters, do. This is it. You pointed it out, Jess. I mean, science can exist. Archaeology can exist. Biology can exist. None of these things can exist in the MAGA world, and I think to some degree, this idea about ignoring all these things, ignoring fact, ignoring science, it has been their strong point. It has been their rallying call, but it's also their Achilles heel. And it will be their Achilles heel in the end, because when reality catches up to them, it's going to be a serious shocker for them. But yeah.
More than 100,000 people marched in New York City. In Chicago, the march at one point stretched 22 blocks. But the protests were hardly confined to big cities in blue states. Here's what the No Kings protests looked like in Anchorage, Alaska. Thousands of people taking to the streets. And the protests included people protesting from all walks of life. Here's what a U.S. Army veteran told a reporter at a protest in Oklahoma City.
I was willing to die and lost a leg in a foreign country fighting for their rights. There's no way I'm bending the only knee I have left for a king here in America. I can't sit idly by why rights are trampled on and ignored, and people are pushed and treated like second-class citizens.
Washington Post reports that efforts by Republicans in the last week to smear the protests ahead of the protests fell flat. Quote, Ezra Levin, co-founder of the liberal grassroots movement Indivisible, that has co-organized the No Kings rally, said that RSVPs had skyrocketed. He credited the increased interest in part to the Republicans' rhetoric about the rallies. Protesters told MSNBC in every city we covered that they felt an urgent need to stand up to the Trump administration.
They're not going to intimidate us with tyrant talk. We are out here to stand up for this democracy.
Do not cower to the fascism and the threats that are coming from D.C. That's what they want us to do, and they will only be successful in that if we remain silent.
I'm very much opposed to all of the policies of Donald Trump. I don't think we need a king. We definitely don't need a dictatorship, and it's time for him to go. I'm against everything that he says and does.
This is the most American thing that you can do, protest and speak.
Yeah. Now, there's a lot of, I've seen this right-wing stuff where they're like, Trump's not acting like a king. Where did you get that from? And again, this goes to the, I think, intelligence, level of a lot of MAGA supporters. And if not intelligence, then it's just wavelength. Like, they don't know, they haven't figured out for some strange reason what Democrats mean when they say king. What they mean is centralizing of power by the executive branch. Like, that has not been seen before in United States history. Hence, Obama did not centralize power in the White House. Like, he did not go after the courts. He did not call judges conspirators or anti-American or anything like that. He didn't appoint people based on their political affiliation. Bush didn't do that. Right. Biden didn't do that. If you look at a lot of what even Biden's supporters criticize, people, independents or liberals, otherwise liberals, criticize Biden for, those are things that Biden passed through Congress that were bipartisan, like the Farmers Act. I forget the name of it. What is it? American Farmers Act, something like that. Something. But I'm sorry. Right now, we've covered this before, but I'm just losing the actual name of the bill that was passed. It went actually to the Supreme Court, and then Republicans fought it after and lost it in the Supreme Court. So that meant minority farmers that were discriminated against when all taxpayers pay into the federal budget, right? This funding that was given to farmers after, that was co-sponsored and passed, right, through the House, through the Senate, and signed by Biden, it was fought by the Republicans in the Supreme Court, and Biden lost it in the Supreme Court. They said it's discrimination to award funding to people that have been economically discriminated against, meaning people that have been denied funds based on their ethnicity or race. They should not seek to to be reconciled financially, while others are awarded financially. The Supreme Court ruled against it. The same with the student debt relief. Biden signed it, but it didn't go out. Right. It got stopped by Republicans. And a lot of Democrats said that Biden was too weak. He should have done what Trump has done. He should have just went full executive branch and just funded it anyway, just like Trump is doing with the military right now, trying to find other ways to fund it. And there's a lot of people that thought Obama didn't go far enough. A lot of people that thought Biden didn't go far enough. And now they're getting a chance to see what it's like to see a Republican break all those standards and do what Democrats wouldn't do. That's what they mean when they say centralizing power around the executive branch. So it's not literally, quote unquote, a king. It's what the behavior would look like if you lived in the United States, if you tried those same things that a king already has inherent to his own power. The king doesn't have to listen to the judicial branch. The king doesn't have to follow laws drafted and put into law by Congress and signed by previous presidents. A king doesn't have to listen to that. A king can circumvent all other branches of government. That's what they mean. Yeah, so these are images of what the rallies look like. Now, I'm sure that there's Republicans and MAGA supporters that would say these are AI generated videos, that this didn't really happen. You would have to basically say, which Trump has already said out of the gate, ABC is lying, MSNBC is lying, AP News is lying, Associated Press, they're lying. Even Fox would be lying in this case, right? Because why would you try to send the National Guard out to demonstrations that don't have enough people? You see what I'm saying? So Trump has even made he flip-flops himself. He does this all the time. But again, to MAGA supporters, they don't care if he flip-flops. Again, you're still waiting for the Epstein files to be released, right? He flip-flopped on that. His entire cabinet flip-flopped from one day to the next, and they're not really demanding it anymore. They've just given up on that. That doesn't matter. And again, other things like that will happen because that's a norm inside of the Trump administration. It's just a norm, and it's an accepted norm.
Building a ballroom. They've wanted a ballroom for 150 years. And I'm giving that honor to this wonderful place. I think we should do it. This was the ballroom, and this room holds 88 people.
Right. So Trump is building a ballroom, that connects to the White House. He's tearing down part of the White House to attach a ballroom, right, to hold a lot of people. And that's taxpayer funded dollars. He's claiming that it's paid for by others. But why the hell would you want anybody paying for it? Listen, the first thing that pops in my mind is Russia, 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 China, 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 because both Russia and China have been accused of using contractors, right, that put spying devices in the actual material, meaning the cement, inside microbes, things that they can put inside of the structure itself to just become a spying device. Not only spying device for who's in that part of the building, but spying device for everything around it. Electronic spying devices. You see what I mean? A hub for hacking cell phones, a hub for listening to what people are discussing. And this can go on from, for some distances, you see. But Trump is doing this. And this is what, people have voted for. This is what MAGA people have voted for. Here we go. Let's see.
and the new one will hold 999 people, which is a difference. I say 999 because I didn't want to crack 1,000. I didn't want people to get concerned because that's getting big. But we're going to have, we'll have the most beautiful ballroom in the country. It's going up, and if you, for those.
Don't mind. There's a certain level of trolls in the chat. Don't mind them because you know, it is what it is. You see it in every platform nowadays, but it also boosts up the algorithm so more people see the video. So that's why I don't block trolls. But you know, you can think between what a troll believes and what a normal human being with a brain who's free to think would believe. I mean, nobody backs up one person that much. No Democrat backed up Biden, backed up Obama that much. No Democrat backed up Kamala Harris that much. You know the Democratic Party through actually dissent of some of their own leadership in some ways, not in vulgar ways, but Democrats typically don't follow every single act that a president does, that their leadership does. They actually criticize, and but when you see trolls, they don't.
That are interested, we got to get back to baseball, but you see the gold drapes? That's a knockout panel. We knock it in, you go, that comes out, and then you have essentially glass and exactly in the decor of the White House. I didn't know I'd be standing here right now because right on the other side, you have a lot of biggest deductions ever taken, job producing deductions, $50 billion to rural hospitals. We took care of Medicaid, Medicare.
Right. So Trump, he's bragging. Trump is bragging about how much they've, you know, reinforced Medicaid by giving $50 billion. But his actual big, beautiful bill takes away $200 billion. But let him talk.
We took care of everything. And we did something that people didn't know. We didn't know where we'd stand in a year or 2 years from now. So we put every single thing that we wanted in that bill for 4 years. So we don't need any more votes. We don't. All we want to do is have a vote of continuation. And it's the first time in history that a group has not voted for continuation. So they have what's called a Trump derangement problem. Have you heard about that problem? Because that's the only reason this could be possible. But I think we're doing very well. I think they're going to have no choice but to go along because the country is setting records in every way and people want it to continue that way. So we're hoping the Democrats become much.
Okay, so what I want to know is how many of you support the Republicans' big beautiful bill, the, you know, reducing of Medicare. How many of you support that? Put a 1 in the chat if you support it. And I want everybody's participation. Put a 2 in the chat if you don't support it.
Much less deranged, and that we will get the vote pretty soon. And I hear they're starting to feel that way too. They're starting to feel like they really have to do what's right for the country. And biggest deductions ever taken, job producing deductions, $50 billion to rural hospitals. We took care of Medicaid, Medicare. We took care of everything. And we did something that people didn't know. We didn't know where we'd stand in a year or 2 years from now. So we put every single thing that we wanted in that bill for 4 years. So we don't need any more votes. We don't. All we want to do is have a vote of continuation. And it's the first time in history that a group has not voted for continuation. So they have what's called a Trump.
You see, what I notice is, of course, there's some real Trump supporters in the chat. But what I notice is that actually, when you ask a simple question and say 1 or 2, you will find out that there's the trolls, the real actual trolls, they won't answer.
Derangement problem. Have you heard about that problem?
So I appreciate everybody. I appreciate everybody answering.
The only reason this could be possible. But I think we're doing very well. I think they're going to have no choice but to go along because the country is setting records in every way and people want it to continue that way. So we're hoping the Democrats become much less deranged and that we will get the vote pretty soon. And I hear they're starting to feel that way too. They're starting to feel like they really have to do what's right for the country. And
okay, so one more time, I'm going to ask if you support the big beautiful bill, the reductions in Medicaid, If you support it, put a 1 in the chat. If you don't, put a 2 in the chat.
Biggest deductions ever taken, job producing deductions, $50 billion to rural hospitals. We took care of Medicaid, Medicare, we took care of everything. And we did something that people didn't know. We didn't know where we'd stand in a year or 2 years from now. So we put every single thing that we wanted in that bill for 4 years. So we don't need any more votes. We don't. All we want to do is have a vote of continuation. And it's the first time in history that a group has not voted for continuation. So they have what's called a Trump derangement problem. Have you heard about that problem? Because that's the only reason this could be possible. But I think we're doing very well. I think they're going to have no choice but to go along because the country is setting records in every way and people want it to continue that way. So we're hoping the Democrats become much less deranged and that we will get.
Okay, so I have another question now for the chat. Let's say you're unemployed, right? And you're looking for a job, but you get sick. Should you receive medical help? Should you have access to a doctor so you can get well? Or should access to health care only be for working people? If you believe access to health care in the United States should only be for working people, period, put a 1 in the chat. If you believe people that are not working should still have access to health care so that they can find a job later, and because they probably paid into healthcare already while they had a job, if you think they should, put a 2 in the chat. Now, if you don't, and you think it's only working people that should get access to healthcare, put a 1 in the chat. If you think for other reasons, folks should still get access, put a 2 in the chat. Let's see what that looks like.
Get the vote pretty soon. And I hear they're starting to feel that way, too. They're starting to feel like they really have to do what's right for the country. And
you know, I noticed because, come on, you know, this is MAGA Mike Johnson. This is Trump's this is their whole talking point. Able-bodied men, able-bodied men. Well, what about the unable-bodied men who can't get access to a doctor? You know, why aren't people talking about that? When MAGA Mike Johnson says able-bodied men, he's implying that those are the only people that don't have access to health care. That's crazy. That's insane. And on top of it, even if you're an able-bodied man, you're looking for a job. So why shouldn't you have access to health care while you're looking for a job? See, this is what I really question Americans, just my own country's foundation. Like, is this something that still harkens on like slavery type of situation? Because in slavery, you get sick. I mean, you know, that was it. That was it. It didn't matter how much you worked. You get sick, you're fucking dead. And I wonder how much of this MAGA Mike Johnson harkens on able-bodied men really goes back to slavery. Because today it doesn't make sense, and I can tell you why. Because even able-bodied men who don't work could have already paid into a healthcare program that they never ever used. Just because you're not employed doesn't mean that you never paid into any type of healthcare, including public healthcare, including healthcare that is sponsored by federal tax dollars. So again, you know, I just question the intelligence of a lot of Americans. How could you be for what Trump is suggesting? How could you be for, even if you don't agree with Obama, even if you didn't vote for Kamala, even if you don't like Biden, how could you agree for that? How could you agree for that? That's suicide. So again, I'm going to ask, if you agree with Trump on the healthcare being reduced, and you believe in MAGA Mike Johnson and healthcare being reduced under federal tax dollars, put a 1 in the chat. If you do not agree, put a 2 in the chat. I just want to see how, because I talked about this MAGA people being suicidal, being a suicidal cult. So go ahead. Let me see. If you don't work, should you have access to health care? Very simple. One, if you believe they should not. Two, if you believe people still unemployed should have access to health care. Put a 2 in the chat. I mean, I'm putting a 2 in the chat because I see all kinds of nuances where proud Americans whose family go all the way back to the colonial period, who have fought in all the wars in the United States history, could probably use some medical care, even though they're not fucking working. I mean, I think that's such an insult to people's intelligence. That should defy any fucking body. Like, why does anyone exist on Earth that has the fucking opinion that Trump has? What is that about? Everyone else in every other Western country would call that treasonous, would call it slavery. Like, and I'm telling you, MAGA voters, if you are okay with that, you may as well be a goddamn slave. Like, you might be thinking you couldn't be a slave, but you're fucking signing up for it. When you say you agree with Trump right here and you agree with MAGA Mike Johnson, I'm just saying, that's my opinion, but hey, it's only my opinion. It's only my opinion. It's nothing else. Now, let's go to more of the shenanigans, because there's a whole lot more. I mean, and again, back to this able-bodied men, which are a lot of them who rely on Obamacare are in red states. So
they are. Their continuing resolution that they propose to keep the government open, including.
Now, for those of you, this is Fox News, and this is Caroline Leavitt, the one who's getting a check. She gets her check automatically paid. It's like Trump, so let's listen.
Included a poison pill that would have undone what President Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill did, which is to restrict illegal aliens from receiving Medicaid benefits. President Trump fixed that in the One Big Beautiful Bill, and Democrats.
Okay, so here it is again. Their talking point is that they fixed the aspect about illegal immigrants getting access to health care, but they're not describing to you what that looks like in reality. How did an illegal immigrant get access to health care? That is the failure. Now, as an American citizen, whether you're Republican, whether you're Democrat, whether you're independent, you should want to be honest to another American citizen, to something that's crucial to all Americans, right? Because believe it or not, there are things. MAGA people need clean water. Non-MAGA people need clean water. Native Americans need clean water. That's indigenous people whose ancestors actually come from the United States of America. They need clean water too. Liberals need clean water. Gays need clean water. Non-gay people need clean water. Handicapped people need clean water. Old people need clean water. Young people, babies need clean water. See, there's some things that are inalienable. And so you would want to know, you would want to have a real conversation on it. So all these people can chime in on it, or when you talk about it, how your choices affect all these different group of people. Let's start off by saying even a white supremacist in the United States, even a KKK person needs clean water. How would it affect a broke ass KKK person in a MAGA state? Here's how. She's not telling you that when emergency services come to pick your shot ass up off the side of the road, even if an immigrant shot your ass, in the neck, stole your wallet and ran off, right? Even if one of those violent immigrants shot you in the neck, grabbed your wallet and ran off, what she's not telling you is that if you go along with her plan, the ambulance will come and show up, see your KKK MAGA ass on the side of the road, choking, trying to explain the motherfucker stole, the immigrant stole my wallet, the immigrant stole my ID. The emergency person would sit there for 2-3 minutes looking to find out if you're an illegal immigrant or not. You can't talk. They don't know. They can't hear your voice. They can't find your wallet. You was caught ass out there by what you claim exists all over the United States of America. Illegal immigrants, dangerous illegal immigrants, rapists. Would a rapist leave your wallet, or would he take it? Would a felon, axe murderer leave your wallet, or would he take it? Would he need some extra money? Would he need your ID so he can go and get, do some other things with it? You tell me. If you don't have your ID, you ain't going to the emergency room. Your ass is dead. So that's how illegal immigrants, that's one of the ways they're getting access to the health plan. Now, do you want it stopped? So if you want to be checked in an emergency situation, when an ambulance comes to your home, when an ambulance comes to pick you up on the side of the road, in an incident where you have been robbed, raped, or transported, trafficked, if you want the ambulance to make sure that you're an American citizen first before they give you life essential care, put a 1 in the chat if that's what you want. If you don't want that, put a 2 in the chat. Again, if you want emergency services before giving you life-saving care in an emergency, let's say you were robbed on the road, shot in the neck, a gasman, can't talk, the motherfucker stole your wallet, the illegal immigrant did it and ran off to, wherever, Venezuela with it. Do you want emergency services showing up after your wallet's been stole and you've been shot in the neck, looking for your identification before they give you medical care? If you want that, put a 1 in the chat. That means you're with Caroline Levitt and Trump and MAGA Mike Johnson. If you don't want that, put a 2 in the chat. That means for that particular part, you're like, nah, fuck that. That's some bullshit. You might support other things they say, but that part right there bothers you a lot. Put a 2 in the chat if that bothers you a lot. Put a 1 in the chat if you are a suicidal MAGA supporter.
Democrats want to take it away because they want these taxpayer-funded benefits to continue to go to illegal aliens in our country. This has been done for the past 4 years under the Biden administration, and the American people roundly rejected it. And you hear AOC, who is apparently the new leader of the Democrat Party in that CNN town hall, say to a concerned American when that American asked, "Do you want my taxpayer-funded benefits going to illegals?" She said, "That's a Republican talking point. Those aren't the real issues Americans are facing." That is a lie. If you look at what happened under the Biden administration, real Americans, elderly citizens, were facing an increase in wait times at hospitals and emergency care centers across the country because
she's doing a lot to try to not tell you what it's really about, but she's hinting on it finally. See, Republicans are finally hinting on what they mean when they're talking about medical care. She's not coming out to tell you. What she means is emergency services. That's what she actually means. Now, had they gone about it and just said, we want to have a talk about emergency services and how that's handled, what federal dollars go to it, and how it's handled on the ground in states because too many immigrants are getting access to emergency service, that would be an honest way to open up the conversation. But you could see this has been dragged out of them. They didn't want to just say what it was because the truth of the matter is that a lot of poor and middle class people will fucking die through emergency services if this bill goes through. That is the facts. So, again, more red state people use Obamacare than blue state people. It's just something you might want to think about. You might even want to ask, is it true that emergency services could be affected? Could emergency services ask people for IDs before they accept them into the hospital? Is it true, Representative, or is it not true? That's free to do. You're a voter. You're a taxpayer. It might actually be your obligation since you are a taxpayer, right? And you care, assumably, about your tax dollars. But all taxpayers don't. Let's be honest. All taxpayers don't care about their tax dollars.
Because they were putting last in line, and illegal aliens were getting that care and that treatment first. And when illegal aliens get medical treatment in this country, who's paying for it? The American taxpayer. Well, not anymore under the Trump administration. That's why this administration is focused on deporting illegal aliens who violate our nation's laws. And we're going to protect.
The bottom line is that these same illegal aliens that they're quoting actually pay into this same system. They don't get access to most of it. The only thing that they could get access to, because it's already illegal, is the emergency services. And emergency services on some people could be like, hey, maybe you're going into birth. That could be it also in some cases. Emergency services could also be like, hey, you fell off a ladder, your leg is broken, you can't walk. Emergency services can look just like what all emergency services look like across the country. People don't plan on having an emergency most of the time when they have an emergency. Now, keep in mind, in the 90s, when this conversation, what prompted actually a change, because it's not all times in the United States history where the ambulance would have to pick you up, where emergency services would have to pick up everyone. Did you know that during that time, before this bill, what they call Obamacare, right? Before that, the American Health Care Act, that's really what it's called. Before that, did you know that loads of Americans were not being admitted into emergency care? Did you know that? How many of you knew that? Put a 1 in the chat if you knew that before the American Health Care Act, there were loads of Americans not being admitted into emergency care, into hospitals. Put a 1 in the chat if you knew that. If you didn't know that, put a 2 in the chat. I just want to see where people are with that. I remember that because I'm 55 years old. So I remember the news from the 90s. I was in my 20s, mid 20s. And I'm from a newspaper reading society and community, highly politically, knowledgeable and active, But there were Americans. This was the issue all across the United States. How come a person, who gets picked up, they can't identify who he is. They can't even identify if you have health care or not. A lot of people, you wasn't going to make it. If you couldn't tell them, here's my health care card right away, your ass wasn't making it to the emergency room. That's straight up real. Now, if you think that living in the wealthiest country that has ever existed in the world, and the most powerful country that has ever existed in the world, if you think that's not pinching pennies, right? Like over what you're able to subsidize, socialize in industry, like you already socialize the private industry, a lot of it, like Elon Musk, you're socializing space exploration by giving him federal tax dollars, right? You're socializing a lot of medicine already, right? And then you're giving the licensing over to private companies, right? Instead of the government producing certain medicines or things like that. For example, COVID care. COVID was, a lot of that was funded by the federal government, you see, and then, other private, Pfizer and other groups got access to it and were able to do work too. And they co-produced work, but without the Americans subsidizing it, it wouldn't happen through tax dollars. I mean, it wouldn't have actually happened as fast, right? And it wouldn't be approved as fast, you see. So there's a lot of things that go hand in hand with Americans funding it through their tax dollars. But the issue is that here, they're pinpointing emergency care. And so you got to ask yourself, is this about money, saving money, or is this about something else? And if it's about something else, just say what it is. Like, is it just period, even though you can afford it, even though this person pays into something that I benefit from, right? An illegal immigrant, how would they have a job? A lot of them use other people's identification. That's how they have jobs. But when it comes time to checking into a hospital, that same identification may not work, except if you're in an emergency situation. Hence, or maybe they don't even show it. A lot of these so-called illegals are paying in to taxes. They're just not getting anything back. You see what I mean? Now, because there are some requirements that people need to look into. So if you just are about, we don't want people from certain countries getting emergency care, why not just say it? Why not just say it? Then you could be looking out for the American citizens that do really need health care, emergency health care, and probably should get it because they're American citizens. Why not just say you don't want people from certain countries? But instead, they're not saying they don't want people from certain countries. What they're saying is that they don't want people from certain, they're not saying they don't want people from all countries, foreigners from all countries. That's really not what they're saying, right? They're really trying to racialize it and pinpoint people from certain countries, certain communities, when they do this, and the reality is that they're not checking a lot of other individuals for backgrounds when they're going around looking for these ICE raids. No ICE raid has happened on Wall Street. They're assuming nobody works there. No ICE raid has happened in affluential neighborhoods. It just doesn't happen that way. It's generally, middle class neighborhoods where ICE raids are happening, and or poor neighborhoods where ICE raids are happening. Places where real life American citizens are born and live. The people that MAGA Mike Johnson coincidentally shifts over from, instead of saying illegals, he says able-bodied men. Communities, there's lots of poor and middle class communities, like MAGA Mike Johnson said, in the United States of America that have able-bodied men that aren't working, according to him, that are real citizens, right? But on the flip side, when you talk about ICE, these are the same communities they're sending ICE to. So, it is what it is.
The rights and the benefits of tax-paying, law-abiding Americans.
Yes, the matter of pay for U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE and other law enforcement personnel under U.S. Department of Homeland Security, DHS, during the shutdown has been addressed.
Right. So these are some updates. Now, she wants to talk about, the shutdown, and they talk about it from how it affects, it affects a lot of people, to be honest, the shutdown. However, Republicans like to highlight where it affects them, and they do it in some disingenuous ways. Like, for example, they didn't point out to American people at the beginning of the shutdown that ICE would be affected, because they didn't want to talk about that, because, of course, it sounds stupid if you send ICE out everywhere to these communities and it's possible they would be the funding would be cut off. That would sound stupid. But once the cat got out of the bag, right, thanks to a lot of podcasters, and they started saying, look, this actually affects ICE pay. How stupid is this? Then they decided they wanted to talk about it. They want to make plans to pay ICE. In other words, it does look dumb. So, it is what it is. But now they've made some adjustments, and these are the adjustments. ICE has not been paid yet. Tomorrow is the new day that they're supposed to be paid. That's tomorrow. That would be the 22nd. Today is the 21st. So let's take a listen.
According to reporting, the Trump administration informed ICE and U.S. Customs and Border Protection (CBP) staff via internal emails that more than 70,000 DHS law enforcement officers, including those at ICE and CBP, will receive a super check by October 22nd, covering pay for both the shutdown period and the next pay period. Reuters. The program is described as selectively ensuring that personnel doing essential law enforcement border security work continue to get paid, while many other federal workers aren't receiving paychecks during the shutdown.
Okay, so just that part right there confirms that they didn't even think of this. They didn't want to even talk about this. The fact that, first of all, y'all, ICE hasn't been paid. They didn't get paid on October 1st. And this would be the second check that they didn't get paid, right? This is the 15th. They get paid every 2 weeks. This is the second check that they have not been paid. Now, that wasn't a talking point because they didn't want to show that Democrats do, although they don't control any branch of the government, that Congress does largely, control the purse. Just like people have tried to point out that Stephen Miller has tried to point out that the president, he has, being the executive branch, he has all kinds of power into all kinds of things, that no one else can interfere with. Well, Congress does too. That's largely the purse funding, how the American people's tax dollars fund different aspects of the government, right? So Now they're willing to talk about it. So the president his plan is to go out and find funds in other ways that already were appropriated and make sure that some of these ICE people get paid. Now, we haven't found out if it's happened because it's not set to happen until tomorrow, the 22nd. So let's listen.
News network. How they're doing it, Ash, what's unclear? It is not entirely clear what exact funds are being used for ICE CBP pay. One source states that DHS did not answer questions about where the funding for ICE CBP came from. The Guardian. Some legal observers suggest the administration is stretching its budgetary authority to keep paying certain folks despite appropriations lapses. And that doing so for some but not others raises questions under the Anti-Deficiency Act, which prohibits spending not authorized by Congress, or the Purpose Statute, which limits using funds for a different purpose than Congress intended. Federal News Network. The coverage appears to apply to law enforcement and border security personnel, ICE, CBP, Secret Service, TSA law enforcement, and not necessarily to all DHS staff or other types of employees. Reuters. Bottom line, yes. ICE officers and other DHS law enforcement border security personnel are being paid during the current shutdown under a special check or special payroll arrangement communicated by the administration. However, this is a partial fix applying to selected personnel, not all federal workers. The funding source for ICE CBP remains opaque. The legality of the approach is being questioned by budget legal observers. It's not clear if the arrangement guarantees continuous pay for the entire shutdown period or just covers the immediate next pay period or two. If you like, I can check for
Right.
you
So listen, y'all, please let me know. As soon as you get any news stories, let me know the news stories that they should be, coming in tomorrow on the 22nd. That's when the first special check is designated to go out. Right. But nobody knows how far they've gone into it or what, but this is according to the White House. Now, I see some people talking about minimum wage in the U.S. That's a great point. Because red states have not raised minimum wage. First of all, the federal government hasn't raised minimum wage in, like somebody said, 13 years. I think it was in the 90s when it was last raised. Maybe it's more than 13 years. But don't get me wrong. I don't have the exact data on that. I haven't looked into that. Maybe half a year or something like that. Maybe 6 months ago was the last time we talked about that here. But it's been a while now. Red states, what I do remember, and we reviewed several times here in the last 6 months, is that red states, their minimum wage by the state, not the federal government. The federal government has not moved on that issue in over a decade. So that means congressional members do not agree on what a national minimum wage should be. So it's still down there at $7 as far as the federal government is concerned. But several states have done their own minimum wage, right? They've made progress on it, but red states tend to be the least, right? So in red states, it's between $7 today, which I think it might be, I don't know what states those are, but it's still between $7, some states, and $11 is the most red states pay in minimum wage. Red states means states that voted for Trump largely, right? These quote unquote MAGA states. Now, Democrat-held states, Democrat-run states, that's states that have a lot of Democratic representation, whether it's a governor, whether it's congressional members, whether it's senators, this kind of things, whether it's mayors, right? This kind of thing. Their minimum wage is between 11, something like 10 and a half or $11 to $20 a month. So people in blue states get paid more minimum wage. Now, when it comes to health care, what's about to happen is that if Donald Trump's big, beautiful bill, if this part is not adjusted, the part about Medicaid and Medicare, what happens is that people are going to start paying more for that across the board. And so how would a person who is not a troll, because of course trolls are suicidal, they're just going to go with anything, and that's okay. I get it. The troll thing is very diabolical. The troll thing is, to pretend, right? Because they may actually hate Republicans. The trolls might want Republicans to do suicidal shit. Well, so you never know. But Most people that live in red states for real right about now are thinking, damn, how are we going to afford more price hikes? There's already price hikes in food. There's already price hikes in energy. How are we going to afford? So loads of people are going to be kicked off of Medicare. And these are real American citizens. These are Americans that voted for Trump. Like straight up. That's about to be, most left out there to the wolves, and it didn't mean that you didn't pay, that you didn't work before and pay into a healthcare program in the past. Doesn't mean that your families didn't. What it means is that according to Republicans, if you're not at work, you should not have access to medical care if you don't have the money. That's what it means, like in just plain language. Like, and we're talking about not just the emergency room. We're talking about all the care that comes after the emergency room also, so they're really, me, myself, I'm a person that believes if you voted for it, you deserve it. But that doesn't mean I hate you. That doesn't mean I think it's right. I don't think it's really, I think that policy is really, really wrong. And, but I also know that if a person votes for it, you got to respect what they voted for. However, I'm from a blue state and I was raised in Washington, D.C. and I say, fuck all that. My ancestors came from the country, in the colonial period. My ancestors fought in every war in the country. My ancestors been paying into healthcare since it was created, whether I needed it or not. What the fuck? And I live outside of the U.S. and I get universal healthcare and universal education. My kids. So as an American citizen that lives outside, I cannot, in a country that is less powerful than the U.S., in a country that, by the way, Denmark is a country where they lost per person more people fighting in the war on terror than the United States did per person, percentage wise. I live in a country that sacrificed more people percentage wise to back the U.S. up in the war on terror. But yet everybody has universal health care. Everybody has universal education, meaning whenever you want to go to school as a child or an adult, you can. It's free and you get a stipend. You get paid to do it. So if you don't make something out of yourself, it's your fault. It's not how much your family made. It's not how much money you have, that kind of thing. I would feel really, I have a real problem with these arguments that MAGA Mike Johnson makes, that Caroline Levitt makes, and they're paid by your tax dollars. I mean, keep in mind, they're supposed to at least at the bare minimum tell you the truth, not their opinion. You could have their opinion that they don't like it or they don't think it's fair or they don't think it's right. But for them to openly lie about what is to happen to you, that's what I have a problem with, ultimately. But in any case, let's go on.
I did not find any reliable public document or memo from Department of Homeland Security, DHS, or Office of Management and Budget, OMB, that guarantees a specific number of future paychecks for U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, or other DHS law enforcement personnel beyond the one super check covering the current shutdown period and the next pay period. Here's what the sources say.
Oh, Christine. Yeah, I hear you. Christina wrote, Estrada. Yeah. What about us people that lived in red states that didn't vote for this? Yeah, your taxpayer dollars is going to Caroline Levitt. Your federal tax dollars. Your taxpayer dollars are going to Trump. They're going to MAGA Mike Johnson, whether you agree or not. And that's where I think it also crosses the line, because your tax dollars are paying to go to Argentina. $40 billion is going to go to Argentina, a failed state. And Trump the other day said they're fighting for their life. They're fighting for their life. But they're not in a fucking war. They're not even being invaded. They're fighting for their life because they have some corrupt ass politicians. That's just it. There's no other reason why Argentina shouldn't be booming. By the way, they have one of the biggest lithium deposits on Earth. Okay? So you could already see that should be funding a lot. But you could already see only the people that invest in private industry are getting paid off of that. The state ain't really doing shit for the people with that largest deposit of, lithium, which, by the way, for people that don't know, lithium is what they use to make a lot of batteries for transport vehicles, L cars, L trucks, this kind of thing. Your lithium, even you use it beyond batteries anyway, but for folks that don't know. So I just think it's bullshit, ultimately, Christina. I think it's sad that Americans haven't figured out that if their neighbor is sick, they might get sick too. Like, there's other ways that this healthcare, not being able to see a doctor, if you have gotten a biological disease, a disease that spreads like a cold, going to a doctor might be how you find out about it. Not going to a doctor means you go to school and spread it to other kids. You see what I'm saying? What if it's something that could have been prevented from spreading if everyone had access to a doctor? They're not even thinking this. So the U.S. is really primed for a biological attack, given what Trump is suggesting. And, they blamed it on the Chinese. They said it was true. They say they were vindicated. Aha, it is true, the Chinese. Okay, well, if that's true, then that means you believe in biological attacks. Well, what are you doing now to stop biological attacks from spreading in the United States of America? Because die from it, and a person that might have health care could fucking die from it anyway. I mean, that's just how it turns out. It's like playing Russian roulette with your tax dollars, which is insane, but yeah, nonetheless.
DHS announced that over 70,000 law enforcement officers at DHS, including ICE, US Customs and Border Protection, US Secret Service, etc., will receive a super check by October 22nd that covers both 8 hours already worked during the shutdown and B, the next pay period. The Guardian, an article from Federal Periods, the future remains uncertain. For example, open quote, "The Trump administration is taking some extraordinary measures to keep certain law enforcement personnel from missing a paycheck. The Defense Department said the option is not going to be available in 2 weeks."
Down, whether it goes forward or it doesn't go forward. Oh, 2 seconds. 2 seconds. Hold on. I can see there's some slowing down. Sorry about that, y'all. I'm back now. Let me just get this posted back up and wait for people to log in the chat. Now listen, we were just discussing the shutdown and the effects of it while at the same time, and some of the contradictions, like Trump just decided he has 40 billion for Argentina. Now, for those of you that research, Argentina has one of the largest, if not the largest, known, but one of. Don't get me wrong, because I don't want anyone to ever just believe what I'm saying and go out and do something based on what I'm saying. You have your own responsibility to do your own research and present it to people if you choose to. If you don't choose to, if you just choose to argue other people, that's also fine. But remember, at the end of the day, you have your own obligation to make your own choices based on the information that you have yourself. Now, from my view, from my research, Argentina has one of at least the largest lithium mines. What's up, Donnie? One of the largest lithium mines, out there, Argentina. Elon Musk has business with Argentina. China has business with Argentina. And the only reason why the government is in a problem is not because they're being attacked by a neighbor. They're not being attacked by the U.S. They're not being attacked by Russia. They're not being attacked by the Chinese. They're not being attacked by Colombia, Venezuela, or anybody else. Chile. They're not being attacked by Chile. The only reason why their government is in the situation it is because of corruption. There's some very wealthy people. Elon Musk is the wealthiest man on earth. He's even in Argentina getting a lot of that business, right? China is there. China's not, I mean, they're a country, but they're vying for influence in Argentina. This thing that went on with the bailout, I mean, this 40 billion could have, Trump is actually now using taxpayer dollars to pay off or to give a subsidy or a payoff to the farmers in the US before Trump's actual tariffs was selling their soybeans to China. That was the largest agricultural export of the United States, soybeans to China, primarily. Now China's buying them from Argentina. But so why is Argentina in an economic situation? Why are they fighting for their life? It's really just because of corruption. And if you in Argentina, a lot of people move out of Argentina to neighboring countries. And, you should check into it. But I actually have some investment in the Argentinian mine myself. It's called, what is it called? Lithium Argentina? No, it's called Lithium Argentina or Argentina Lithium, and, no, it's called Lithium Argentina, but Lithium Americas is they're in partnership with them. So they also do mining in the US, right? And so that's why I know that they have one of the largest lithium deposits. It's through actual having to know through practical reasons. But if people don't think that, you're free to not think that. But my thoughts on this are pretty much what No King's protest was about is that a president shouldn't have the authority to do all these things. You shouldn't be able to be so oxymoronic in your application. On one hand, you have 40 billion for Argentina, who are not American citizens. On the other hand, you're tired of people, illegal immigrants in the United States getting access to health care, and you pass a law that's going to affect other Americans from getting health care just to solve that problem. On the other hand, you give Argentina 40 billion to bail out their country's economy, while China, the biggest buyer of U.S. soybeans, which was the United States' biggest agricultural export, you fuck it up. And now you're giving 40 billion to Argentina, someone who's benefiting from China's now buying their soybeans. I mean, it makes no sense. No matter how you look at it, something wrong happened there. And if you can't admit that something wrong is happening there, I would say you're a troll. You're probably not really an American citizen, because this is beyond the optics. Everyone can see optics, just mathematically. It makes no sense whatsoever. And guess who he said the tariffs were for? The tariffs that hurt the Chinese or stopped the American soybean farmers. Guess who he said was paying the tariff? He said China was paying the tariff. Is it true? So was Trump telling the truth when he said that the taxpayer, the citizen, the buyer in the United States wasn't paying the tariff, that China would pay those tariffs? So he said the other countries that he put the tariffs on would be the ones paying the tariffs. If that's true, put a 1 in the chat. If that was a bold-faced lie, put a 2 in the chat. That's what I want to know. So, was Trump telling the truth about tariffs? Are tariffs attacks on the country, the country that's exporting their product, or is it attacks on the importer and the buyer of the product, i.e., American citizen? You tell me. If it was a tax, if Trump was telling the truth, put a 1 in the chat. If he wasn't, put a 2 in the chat. I'm going to put a 2 because I don't see how he told any truth about that. And I think Americans right about now, at the same time they're voting to, they're pushing, not voting, but pushing this healthcare crisis on people, that Americans are just about now about to feel the real cost of all those tariffs, because they kick in later. The real cost on the ground kick in later. And, to me, it just seems like a diabolical recipe for destroying a lot of Americans, a lot of naive American citizens. I'm just happy that, The blue states are a little more insulated, although will be harmed by this policy, no question at all. That's the only thing I can take home from this, that, wow, my blue state culture, has a better chance of surviving than red state culture after this. But, but that's sad, because I myself would never have thought of, harming red states that way, because I believe that red states and blue states have more in common, more that, that unite them than divided them. But I'm learning through Trump's presidency that no, actually, for a lot of these red state people, there's more that divides us. So I just find it hella ironic that they are willing to cut off their nose to spite their face. I mean, I just find it poetic, to be honest with you. I don't see it as anything else but just something that is very, very strange, that only comes with ignorance, you could say, pretty much. Now check this out. There's been some other things that have happened with ICE, right? It's not just the shutdown that affects them, but here's something that is positive. Let's see here. ICE. Oh, no, this wasn't it. Hold on. Is this it? Oh, wait a second. No, that's the Nazism. Hold on. Before we go into that, there's something else that was. Oh, here it is. Boom. ICE won't be able in Chicago to use the same practices anymore unless they defy the court orders. Now, this is what I want to ask Americans. Should the next president use the same tactics, regardless of their political persuasion? Should the next president use the same force of power and use of power as Trump? If you think the next president, even if he disagrees with you, should he use the same means to go about business? Should the next president do that? If you agree and you believe the next president should use the same force, put a 1 in the chat. If you think the next president shouldn't, that the next president should go back to what I would call, let's call it the Bush norm. I'm saying that to avoid Biden and Harris, Biden and Obama, because obviously MAGA people hate them, right? Nothing was normal when Biden and Harris were in office, or Biden. So let's go back to Bush. Should the next president use the Bush standard or the Trump standard? If you think the next president should use the Bush standard, put a 1 in the chat. If you think the next president should use the Trump standard, regardless of where they go with that, even if it means they're going to throw Elon Musk in jail, Trump in jail, his kids in jail, do you want the next president to go about it the way Trump's doing it? Put a 2 in the chat if you believe so. Yeah, I'm confused, Eric. I'm confused myself, because on one hand, I believe that I don't believe myself. I believe it's I don't want the next president to do the same as Trump. I don't think the next president has to do the same as Trump. I just think you just have to do what you regularly do. Look, what is not right is that you are not to take top secret documents out of the United States and bring them to your fucking home in boxes and leave them in the toilet. And when the federal government asks you to return them, you do not comply. That's supposed to be wrong no matter who you're with. And if you heard me say that John Bolton shouldn't be prosecuted if he committed anything like that, I would say, of course, he should be prosecuted if he took top secret documents out and it wasn't approved by the U.S. government at first. Very simple. I don't care who it is or who it happens with. But the thing about it is that Trump admitted himself after he was president that those documents were not approved, that he did not make them. The president is supposed to sign off on it, and he didn't. He admitted it himself, But nonetheless, there's loads of things that Trump has been involved in. I mean, I really love how MAGA people don't want to answer simple questions like, do you believe the next president, if the next president is Kamala Harris, So now let me change the question. If the next president is Kamala Harris, and I only want to hear from Trump supporters, like Chris Binkley, for example, only Trump supporters this time. Do you believe that the next president, if it's Kamala Harris, should use the same use of force to go about her political agenda? Put a 1 in the chat and put MAGA. So I know if you believe that the next president, if it's Kamala Harris, should use the same amount of force, and the Democrats should use the same amount of force to achieve their political goals as Trump is using right now, put a 1 in the chat and put MAGA. This is only for MAGA people, because I notice a lot of MAGA people, they don't answer certain questions, and that lets me know that they're either trolls or they're very hard-headed. I just want to give them a chance, though, to speak their minds on that particular topic. I could see a lot of people that have their brain screwed on, correctly, don't believe you should misuse power and believe that there should be normalcy and that's enough. But MAGA supporters definitely, they seem to, not want to tell you. Oh, here's one that believes that. Okay, here's one that believes the next one. Okay, so look, here we go. But this is Jermaine. This is not Jermaine just got in here. I ain't seen any Jermaine. Okay, Jermaine was there though. He's been consistent. Oh no, Jermaine's been back and forth. I see some different answers. Okay. All right. Yeah. All right. Well, in any case, I don't want to always blame MAGA. But so I myself, I don't think you need to use these extremes that Trump is using to do anything effectively. I believe that that's too much. For example, if you have to look that much for a crime, maybe there's no crime. You know what I mean? But Trump, he has obviously looked more for crimes, in terms of his political rivals than any Democrat has ever looked for crimes, because Trump's crimes were just right out in the open. They're just right out in the open. So there's almost no dispute about the crimes. And if you don't prosecute them, it makes all other Americans believe, hey, why should I pay taxes? If the law doesn't apply to him, why should it apply to me? For example, New York, Letitia James. Do you believe, MAGA supporters, and put MAGA in the front too so I know it, do you believe that all taxpayers should be able to do the same thing that Trump did regarding his appraisals of his property? Should that apply to all taxpayers? Should that be legal, what Trump did, when it comes to everybody that lives in blue states? Because Trump is from a blue state, New York City. So let me know what you think about that. Should every New Yorker be able to file, these property evaluations, the same way that Trump did it? Should all New Yorkers be able to do that? Should all Americans be able to do that? Or is there a problem with that? His so-called damn crimes. Yeah, people still trying. Some MAGA people are like, what's the crime? But don't get me wrong, because it can't be both ways. It has to be one way. So if they're not crimes, that means you believe everybody should be able to do it, right? No, that was New York. That's why the New York attorney is on that. You're confusing two different things. You're confusing his business and his operation in Florida with Letitia James in New York City. So those are New York City apartments, my man. So just check that out, Nathan. Yeah. Okay, Oregon. Okay, I think, let me see here. Oregon Duck said, I'm Republican, but to be honest, this is a little too much. Slow it down to a Bush. There you go. Hey, let me put that up there. I'm just saying, like, I myself, I don't believe Democrats and Republicans or Americans, period. If we really want to be factual and we really want to look at the history and what makes someone an American, I don't think we're that different. So I would never conceive of achieving political means I would never conceive of going as far as Trump has gone. And especially not just to be against someone. I wouldn't spread this hate, like this thing about red state people being one way or the other. Because my personal view is, if you like For example, gun rights, the way that a lot of red states have gun rights, then you keep it that way. That's my personal view. I don't believe it's healthy, right? But that's kind of how. And as long as Democrats have the right to preserve what they feel is norm, I don't see what the problem is, right? But I think what happens too often in American politics is one person's norm has to be the other. And I think the other thing that happens too much is a lot of lying. For example, when you hear this issue about transvestites, or you hear this issue about, let's take transvestites, for example. People argue it like it's a federal government thing. No, it's actually pretty much a state thing. Those states were the ones that decided by themselves how they would apply the federal law. It's not the federal government who did that. You see, it's the same thing with marijuana. And it's still illegal according to the federal government, or quote unquote illegal. But how states apply it is different. That's their own business. And I just think Republicans tend to be a little hypocritical about it, because a lot of Democratic states, they don't have this issue with that Republicans have been raising that they have in terms of transvestites. It's like, and then I want to just to add a little caveat on it. Right. Whatever happened to public bathrooms that are just created for all people? Like, they made a big issue about this public thing. Yo, I live in a country, I live in Denmark. I've been to plenty of places, museums, public spaces where the bathrooms are openly designed for one type of person. And that's not a gender thing. That's a person who likes privacy. That's how the bathrooms are designed. So you have stalls. You don't have these urinals for men. That doesn't exist. Everybody's supposed to learn how to use a toilet. If you have a ding-a-ling, you're supposed to lift up the toilet seat and take a pee. And if you don't, you can sit down, but it's just called cleanliness and people being respectful towards each other. You have a door, you shut it, Now, for some people, that might sound strange to have bathrooms for men and women. Well, I don't really get what it is unless myself, if you have a child, you escort your child into the bathroom, right? If the bathroom is for men and women and it all has private stalls, well, then you close the stall. Very simple. You come out and you wash your hands. But it exists in a lot of countries already. But for some reason, the U.S. is still trying to figure that out. A private restaurant should be able to do what they want. Maybe that's a little different in different states. But public things that are paid for by federal tax dollars by everybody, I don't see what's wrong with a toilet that works for everybody. That's what I don't get. But to me, it's just another conversation I think they have that kind of gets people thinking about 0.5% rather of the population rather than like 95% of the population. Maybe that was a bad example, but in any case, let's move on to the next thing. Here, I'm not so punitive about red states myself, but I'm more one that believes blue states should be rewarded by their own tax dollars for, in the ways they believe is norm. And I think red states too. But as you can see right now, red states typically produce less of the federal GDP. They usually are taker states. That's what's happening with red state policy right now. Blue states across the board are generating more of the federal budget, So I don't see why people should be so punitive towards them, But in any case, here's the next thing. ICE is not allowed to operate the same anymore. So let's listen.
ICE agents can now be arrested in Chicago and throughout Cook County, Illinois, if they try and arrest anyone who is going to court. Now, this is effective today. Cook County Circuit Chief Judge Timothy Evans signed the order effective today that bans civil arrests of any party, witness, or potential witness going to court proceedings. ICE agents are also barred from making arrests in parking lots, sidewalks, surrounding entryways inside courtrooms without a judicial order. ICE agents are also barred from making arrests in parking lots, sidewalks, surrounding entryways to courthouses, inside courtrooms without a judicial order. ICE agents also cannot make arrests of any individuals going to a court proceeding, attending a court proceeding, or returning home from a court proceeding. Why is this all happening? Because of everything that's been going on in Chicago and in Cook County, and quite frankly throughout the United States, but this particular order is only for Cook County, and Chicago is part of Cook County. But everything that's been going on, ICE agents are in plain clothes. They're storming courthouses like animals. They refuse to identify themselves. They refuse to share which agency they work for. They do not, most of the time, ever have a warrant. And they're treating people like animals. So this can no longer happen without a judicial warrant in Cook County. Now, we'll see what the rest of the country does, at least other Democratic areas, but who knows? I will definitely keep you updated on all of this. What are your thoughts? These ICE agents have gotten out of control. The abuse and the animalistic behaviors have to stop. I will keep you updated. Please like, follow, and share so that I can continue to provide you with content. And I appreciate
this is another example. This is another example of state, right? The difference between federal law and state law, and where they intersect, and your freedom and your rights. Now, the truth is that federal laws and state laws are supposed to, by design, intersect. One is not designed to have more, inherently designed to have more power than the other, but they're designed to intersect. That means states have the right to apply laws in the manner in which they believe it should be applied. It's not unilateral. Most of the time, it's not unilateral at all, right? And the reason why you have that is because you had to have bargaining to bring states together in order to make a country in the first place. Yeah, people believed in different things back in the day in the United States when the country was formed. So this is how the Constitution has been formed, to acknowledge those differences, right? To bring people together in a union rather than to divide them all, right? And so this thing with ICE, Illinois has decided that this goes against their actual state constitution, what ICE is doing. They have the right to legislate on a state level, and they have outlawed these things. Wearing that mask, you can't do anymore. Go to a court hearing, an immigration court hearing. That's fundamentally, in my view, wrong. If a person is going to a hearing, that means they're following the law. How can you, in the first place, acknowledge that they're following the law? Because obviously ICE wouldn't be there if they didn't believe they were following the law, right? To follow the law is to show up to the immigration hearing, right? Now, how could you abuse that? How can you be for it and against it? And there's a contradiction there between federal law, the way it's being practiced right now, and state law. It's a constitutional crisis because given the fact that these laws are designed to intersect, you have to choose either how it intersects, or you have to, figure out what you're doing wrong. Because if it's not intersecting, then you're actually doing something wrong. Now, why would you expect an immigrant to show up to an immigration hearing if you know the outcome of the hearing doesn't matter? So, again, to put this in context for a lot of American citizens, right? To take it out of that, because I know a lot of people might say, well, they're immigrants, so it doesn't matter. Wrong, because the law, makes exceptions for immigrants. You see, even within the law, you can't just all of a sudden throw out immigration law, right? You can't. Immigration law has existed even for people that are in between status, right? So let's try to apply it in a way that would affect most American citizens. Let's say what would be a good example? Let's say, What you all can tell me what some other good examples of this are actually, because it's not often that this happens. There's the weed laws. By the way, Republicans are moving on gun rights regarding weed people. Did you know that? Maybe that's the best example. But since that's a new story, a lot of people don't know about it. But that's just in the news cycle in the last 48 hours, y'all. Be aware of that. But maybe we can review it in a second. But do you think it's right that an immigrant or illegal immigrant or a person that doesn't have status, do you think it's right of them to attend court hearings regarding their status if they know ICE is going to go there and pick them up and kick them out of the country no matter what the judge says anyway? If you think people, illegal immigrants, according to you, or immigrants, should report to court hearings if there's a risk of ICE being there, if you think they should still do that, put a 1 in the chat. If you don't think a person should go to an immigrant hearing, if there's a chance that ICE would actually not follow the court orders, put a 2 in the chat if you don't think that's actually right. You know, I'm going to put a 2 in the chat because I don't think it makes sense that an immigrant should go to a immigration hearing where a judge could issue a finding and then ICE come along and go against that finding, you know? So, yeah. So I hope. There we go. So I just want to know what other people think. I mean, I myself think it doesn't make fucking sense. I know it doesn't make fucking sense. To me, it sounds like ICE doesn't really know where they sit on that particular question, you know, because again, you showing up at an immigration hearing, you're admitting that they're following the law. So to me, it seems like, why would you go to a place where you know people are following the law and then expel them anyway, go against this, you know, practice of the law. Like, you know, it's their own court that's doing it. You know, if I'm correct, it's federal dollars is financing these immigration hearings, you know. So to me, it seems like a hot mess, like something that is so central, like the federal government needs to be addressed like right away. It shouldn't be on the back burner. This shouldn't be something that people are happy with being so ambiguous about how the law applies. It seems like an overreach by the executive branch, like an overreach of its own, actual law and rule, you know, because the executive branch is essentially supposed to execute the law. But you're not making laws in the executive branch. You're following laws and executing laws. So how can you go against laws that you're supposed to execute? I mean, let's hear this again. Let me know what you think.
Can now be arrested in Chicago and throughout Cook County, Illinois, if they try and arrest anyone who is going to court. Now, this is effective today. Cook County Circuit Chief Judge Timothy Evans signed the order effective today that bans civil arrests of any party, witness, or potential witness going to court proceedings. ICE agents are also barred from making arrests in parking lots, sidewalks, surrounding entryways, inside courtrooms, without a judicial order. ICE agents are also barred from making arrests in parking lots, sidewalks, surrounding entryways to courthouses, inside courtrooms, without a judicial order. ICE agents also cannot make arrests of any individuals going to a court proceeding, attending a court proceeding, or returning home from a court proceeding. Why is this all happening? Because of everything that's been going on in Chicago and in Cook County, and quite frankly throughout the United States, but this particular order is only for Cook County, and Chicago is part of Cook County. But everything that's been going on, ICE agents are in plain clothes. They're storming courthouses like animals. They refuse to identify themselves. They refuse to share which agency they work for. They do not, most of the time, ever have a warrant. And they're treating people like animals. So this can no longer happen without a judicial warrant in Cook County. Now, we'll see what the rest of the country does, at least other Democratic areas, but who knows? I will definitely keep you updated on all of this. What are your thoughts? These ICE agents have gotten out of control.
Right. Let me know your thoughts. If you think, I mean, to me, matter of fact, let me just say this first. Already, taxpayers are funding the immigration courts. So this means people from red states, people from blue states, people who are gay, people who are straight, people who are black, people who are white, people who are Latino, people who are Native, people who are tall, short, fat, skinny, people who are, Democrats, people who are Republicans, people who are whatever, right? Handicapped, people who are non-handicapped, right? All of these people are paying for the court proceedings, the immigration court proceedings, the judges, the lawyers, the lights, the building, the police officers there that work for the courts, and what have you. You're paying for that. At the same time, you're paying dollars, money out of your check, out of your hourly wage. It's called federal income tax. You're paying for another branch to do the exact opposite. Does that make any damn sense? Yo, why isn't Trump at least calling for it to be finished? Like, why isn't Congress stepping up on that and saying this is a waste of fucking money? Because it is. This can't be but a pure, this is a pure example of the waste of public tax dollars. Like, how can you literally be paying courts, a building? You even pay for the janitor that goes there to clean the toilets in the federal building, right? Where the courts hearings are happening, where the immigration hearings are happening. You're paying for the judge. You're paying for the officers that work in the building, whoever they're from, whatever agencies they're from. You're paying for a lot of stuff. The prosecutors, you're paying for the defendants. You're paying for all of that. At the same time, Trump has decided to fund an exercise that goes completely against it. All of it is your tax dollars, and you probably pay more for the courts. I'm thinking, I don't know, don't quote me because I don't know myself. I'm going to look into this, but you probably pay more for all the courts and the court proceedings and the court paperwork and all of that shit than you pay for ICE, it might be. So if you are to, pay this, if you're paying this and you are paying this, what do you think Congress should do? Should Congress put a stop on paying for these immigration courts? Or, and all that goes along with it? Or should Congress continue to pay for those immigration courts? And I'm talking about outside of Chicago, because obviously Chicago has made this, the state itself, or Illinois, the state itself, has made this illegal. But let me know your thoughts on that.
Control, the abuse, and the animalistic behaviors have to stop. I will keep you updated. Please like, follow, and share so I can continue to provide you with content. And I appreciate it. Cook County Circuit Chief Judge Timothy Evans signed the order of.
So this was on the 15th when this order was signed.
Effective today, that ban was going to court. Now, this is effective today. Cook County Circuit Chief Judge Timothy Evans signed the order effective today that bans civil arrests of any party, witness, or potential witness going to court proceedings. ICE agents are also barred from making arrests in parking lots, sidewalks, surrounding entryways, inside courtrooms, without a judicial order. ICE agents are also barred from making arrests in parking lots, sidewalks, surrounding entryways to courthouses, inside courtrooms, without a judicial order. ICE agents also cannot make arrests of any individuals going to a court proceeding, attending a court proceeding, or returning home from a court proceeding. Why is this all happening? Because of everything that's been going on in Chicago and in Cook County, and quite frankly throughout the United States, but this particular order is only for Cook County, and Chicago is part of Cook County. But everything that's been going on, ICE agents are in plain clothes. They're storming courthouses like animals. They refuse to identify themselves. They refuse to share which agency they work for. They do not, most of the time, ever have a warrant. And they're treating people like animals.
So things worth knowing. Things worth knowing. Yeah, newsflash. Good morning to you. You know, and I was asking this question, and I want to know from Matt Nesbitt also. Do you think Congress should do something about funding courts, immigration courts, right? That have findings, for example, find that the immigrant has followed the law and they continue to give them stay. Do you think Congress should pass something that stops that funding rather than just allow ICE to be funded to show up at court hearings, go against court rulings at the same time that they're funding the court to, administrate their immigration status properly according to the law? And do you see the oxymoron in it? What would you want Congress to do? Do you want Congress to keep using your tax dollars to pay for the courts, the police officers in the courts, the administration staff of the courts, the court buildings, the janitor in the court to clean the toilets in the court, all of that stuff, the security, whatever? Do you think it's smart for Congress to continue to pay them while they pay ICE to violate those very orders that the courts have made? Let me know your thoughts, because it's your tax dollars, or if you think it's okay that they waste that money, because I see it as a waste of money. You can't have both. You can't have the federal government administrating immigration cases according to the law, and then ICE come along and go against the findings of the actual court. Because they're both staffed and paid for by federal officers, federal tax dollars, your federal tax income, what you pay out of your hourly wage for your job. So I'm just curious about that. Like, to me, it's just a blatant disregard for taxpayer dollars, for laws. I don't see how that is. I don't see how that works at all. I think it only speaks to the mismanagement of the government of the United States right now. And I don't think there could really be there's few purer symbols of that. But in any case, on to the last bit. This is what's going on with the Nazi stuff. And it's very serious. Me, myself, I again see this language as treasonous. I don't know how you could, as an American citizen, be so forgetful about history. Now, a lot of Americans already don't want to acknowledge that genocide happened in the Americas towards the Native Americans. I'm talking about U.S. citizens. Other Americans in other parts of America agree that there has been a genocide. There's a lot of United States American citizens that don't want to review slavery, the history, the true legacy of slavery in the United States. They just want it erased. They don't want to discuss it. They don't see what connection it has to their lives today. They don't see how they benefited from having those discussions in the past. And they're very resentful about the present state of the United States, its finances, its, politics, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, we already know that. But now there's Americans who are saying they don't even respect what happened in Europe in terms of the Holocaust, how many millions of Jews were killed. Also, hundreds of thousands or millions of other people were killed that were not Jews for other reasons, because the Nazis had a hit list. It seems really ridiculous that in the United States of America, the place our ancestors paid federal tax dollars to to fight against fascists, because the Nazis were fascists, to fight against fascism because Mussolini was fascist, to fight against it because at that time the Japanese were fascists, come on, to fight against that, the Nazis invaded France. The Nazis invaded Denmark. The Nazis invaded their surroundings, Poland. They committed atrocities. They were a problem. It seems like when they make these kind of comments, that they're joking about all these things. Let's look at them.
Politico reported on a group chat of a bunch of young Republicans. I'm wondering your thoughts on that, and does this reflect, is it just some bad young apples in this chat, or do you think that there's a toxicity around the entire party?
Some bad apples. These are the future of the Republican Party. This was so vile. It is hard to find the words to put into context that these are people who are part of a political party, one of two major political parties, and they believe in gas chambers and rape and discrimination based on the color of people's skins. These are racist, sexist, disgusting remarks. And I would say this. We have a leader from the Republican Party in this state, the highest ranking individual, who in the backdrop of all this calls our candidate for mayor, one of our candidates for mayor, a jihadist and a terrorist, and then somehow says, oh, what they said, these young Republicans, was wrong. Like, look at what you say yourself. Look at your inflammatory words. And maybe they have an effect on these young people, many of whom you support and have supported you. And you ought to just do a little re-examination of how far this has gone, where this is normalized enough that thousands of texts are uncovered. This is not one person saying they love Hitler. This is a whole lot of people saying things that are so disgusting and so abhorrent that everybody from the president on down should condemn them. And there's got to be consequences. Kick them out of the party. Take away their official roles. Stop using them as campaign advisors.
Politico reported on a group chat of a bunch of young Republicans.
But the reality is that kids do stupid things, especially young boys. By focusing on what kids are saying in a group chat, grow up. I'm sorry, focus on the real issues. Don't focus on what kids.
The Vice President of the United States is refusing to condemn the dozen or so leaders of young Republican groups behind a trove of vile and offensive chats on the messaging platform Telegram. Those chats obtained by Politico include 251 racist, homophobic, and anti-Semitic slurs. One message reads, quote, "I love Hitler," end quote. Here is Vance, again, the Vice President of the United States, today.
The reality is that kids do stupid things, especially young boys. They tell edgy, offensive jokes. Like, that's what kids do. And I really don't want us to grow up in a country where a kid telling a stupid joke, telling a very offensive stupid joke, is cause to ruin their lives. We're not canceling kids because they do something stupid in a group chat.
These quote unquote, yes, save the grown kids range in age from 18 to 40. Several are well established in Republican politics. MSNBC has not independently confirmed that reporting.
I would like to note there are many young black and brown men in this country who are living with the ramifications of something they did as actual children. But yes, please save the young Republicans that want to opine about Hitler. I have to read this. I'm told this is the response from the Young Republicans Board of Directors. We are appalled by the vile and inexcusable language revealed in the Politico article published today. Such behavior is disgraceful, unbecoming of any Republican, and stands in direct opposition to the values our movement represents. Those involved must immediately resign from all positions within their state and local Young Republican organizations. We must hold ourselves to the highest standard of integrity, respect, and professionalism. At least 4 of the people involved in these chats have resigned or been fired from these positions. We weren't talking about people in leadership. But Michael Steele, I want to read some more from the Politico reporting. The people in this chat, oh, please put me back up on the screen. They referred to black people as monkeys and the watermelon people, and mused about putting their political opponents in gas chambers. They talked about raping their enemies and driving them to suicide, and lauded Republicans who they believe support slavery.
So this is a conversation with 18 to 40-year-old Republican.
Right. So, I'm having some difficulty here. Hold on. Let me pause this. What happened? Okay, yeah, the internet, y'all. Sorry about that. Now, listen, click like, click subscribe, and then I'm going to do this last chapter. We cut off on this watermelon man, this language from the young Republicans. Now, what's ironic is that Trump and these young Republicans, by the way, they're just average age Americans like myself, from 30s, 40s, 50s, this kind of thing. Maybe some of them are younger, but not those people in these group chats, right? They're your average American. Now, there's a contradiction I draw here too, and that is Trump. He is so against the thing like freedom of speech, First Amendment, which the right to organize, the right to gather, the right to speak your mind, right? He's against these demonstrations, even though they are upheld by the Constitution. We're talking about the literal ground, foundational law of freedom of speech, which is there because the United States before it became a country, was a territory of the King of England, right? So that war of independence was fought based on that. These new laws that we got were based on the foundings of the country becoming free from a tyrant, which is what the founders saw the king as being. Well, now Trump is so against that First Amendment, like to where he would show you that they would say these kind of things about, they would say these kind of things about the No Kings rally, right? You heard them. They described it in ways that are just like, un-American, blah, blah, blah. They literally call it, they just speak about it in a negative way. Here, let's look.
Republican Speaker of the House called these rallies hate America events. Boy, does he have it wrong. Millions of Americans are coming out today not because they hate America. We're here because we love America.
Now, so you see, they've been having this campaign to describe First Amendment rights as when Democrats use it, or when people, not Democrats, because there's independents also, and there's also increasingly some Republicans that are speaking out against Trump. But when they're doing this, in this way, by organizing public, they're describing it as anti-American, right? But at the same time, the same people, when you ask them about this,
Politico reported on a group chat of a bunch of young Republicans. I'm wondering your thoughts on that, and does this reflect, is it just some bad young apples in this chat, or do you think that there's a toxicity around the entire party?
Some bad apples. These are the future of the Republican Party. This was so vile. It is hard to find the words to put into context that these are people who are part of a political party, one of two major political parties, and they believe in gas chambers and rape and discrimination based on the color of people's skins. These are racist, sexist, disgusting remarks. And I would say this. We have a leader from the Republican Party in this state, the highest ranking individual, who in the backdrop of all this calls our candidate for mayor, one of our candidates for mayor, a jihadist and a terrorist, and then somehow says, oh, what they said, these young Republicans, was wrong. Like, look at what you say yourself. Look at your inflammatory words. And maybe they have an effect on these young people, many of whom you support and have supported you. And you ought to just do a little re-examination.
yeah, because look, to bring some context to that, right? You had the governor of Pennsylvania, right? What's the guy's name again? I forget I forget his name, but he was attacked. There was because of his background being, or his ethnic or religious background being Jewish, right? He was attacked by a Muslim for that, right? Now, had his home burnt down, part of the governor's mansion burnt down, part of it, but he was there, in his own words, to kill him and his family. Now, to me, that's a problem as a liberal. To me, that's a problem as a Democrat. To me, that's a problem as an American citizen whose family goes back to the colonial period on both sides, which is not what a lot of these right wingers can say. Not the ones you hear them talking, right? Strangely enough, I don't know how that happened. Elon Musk seems to be real frustrated about America when he's getting the lion's share of American tax dollars, damn near, To me, it seems really weird how they can be for the First Amendment for these kind of things, but against the First Amendment when it's protesting against Trump, And secondly, look at what they're choosing to pick the mantle up on and observe. Nazism, something our ancestors, if you're an American citizen, whose family's been in the country for a little bit, not that long, but at least a little bit, Some people have forgotten our ancestors fought against fascism, fascist Italy, fascist Germany, and, fascist Japan at that time. Yes, we fought against Japan. We blew Japan up with a nuclear bomb or atomic bombs too, because of this issue, right? And now today they're supporting the other side in their language. They're supporting fascist Italy. They're supporting fascist Japan. They're supporting fascist Germany right now today. Secondly, we fought the war for the Civil War. Confederate states lost that war. Part of that war was about freedom of human beings, right? Our ancestors, all Americans' ancestors, pretty much fought in that war. Now, most of the blue, what we call the blue, were the Union. People that were on the side of the Union, the one that won the war, we fought against slavery, right? So these aren't things that we make fun of. These aren't things that we say to make, to be American is to bring back slavery. No, we fought a defining war against it. Okay? A real war where people lost their lives, right? A real war where, the fabric of the country was decided, at that point. Now, again, these people seem to go against that, what has been known to be American since the Civil War. That's really what's going on. So let's play it again.
Of how far this has gone.
But the reality is that kids do stupid things, especially young boys, by focusing on what kids are saying in a group chat. Grow up. I'm sorry. Focus on the real issues. Don't focus on what kids.
Right. And so Shapiro, right. Thanks, Eric. And Avis, thank you. Now, here's the thing. Shapiro, Jewish American family, right? They're attacked because of their heritage, because of their ethnicity, because of their religion in the United States of America. Liberals are against that. Democrats are against that. Yet these people are promoting it. Like, they're literally promoting. Now, the person that attacked his family was a Muslim. The person that attacked Shapiro's family was a Muslim. Again, these are the same contradictions we're drawing up. Why are MAGA people having the same ideology as the Muslim people they claim are extremist? Why is that? You see, I mean, we have to ask ourselves, why is that? Why is that being accepted at all? I'm saying at all, because, again, we fought World War II over fascism. We fought a civil war over fascism. You see what I mean? We fought fascist wars the entire time. We fought against a king. You see what I mean? Who was a lot like, fascist. Yes. I mean, did you think the England was going around always doing the right thing? You see what I mean? You don't think they were involved in setting up sexist and ethnic, hierarchies? You see what I mean? Like, come on, this is what was happening in that period for England specifically. They were committing genocide against Native Americans. That's what happened in the United States. That was ethnic cleansing. You see what I mean? So we fought against him, although we continue to participate in it largely. But, hey, we participated in the oppression of women until the Civil War and after the Civil War. Women couldn't own property. Women couldn't vote. It took the same 14th Amendment before African Americans and women could vote in the United States of America. You see what I mean? So do we want to roll that back? But here is the main controversy. Here I think is the crux of it. MAGA people are supporting theories which the same Muslim used to attack Ben Shapiro, his family, these anti-Jewish tropes, the idea that they run the world, and by the way, I hear it all the time, even in people that don't even see themselves as anti-Semitic. Don't get me wrong. You could debate the term all you want, but people that don't consider themselves anti-Jewish often repeat some of these tropes too. Like, somebody told me recently that 70% of all the Jews across the world go home to Israel once a year. No, or have at least been to Israel once. That's not true. You see, the number is far lower, and it's lower than 50%. It's like in the 40%, right? So there's a lot of Jewish people that don't support the Israeli government, don't even have anything to do with Israel. You see, but the anti-Semitics and the people in MAGA, they agree. They believe that they do. The anti-Semitic people in Islamic fractions, not Islam, but I call it fractions, certain groups, they do believe these kind of tropes, So again, Josh Shapiro, sorry about that. Yeah, Josh Shapiro. That's right. Thanks, Eric. Again, these are some contradictions. So why do these MAGA people, why isn't this taken serious? Because this undermines the entire Republican Party's debate, essentially. You can't have it both ways. You see, and it seems like that they're asking taxpayers to allow them to have it both ways. And I'm sorry, taxpayers don't have it both ways. Nobody's supposed to have it both ways. If the person at the bottom of the chain is paying federal tax dollars and they have to follow the law, so should you. Nobody has it both ways in the society. You see what I mean? That's wrong. And right now, the last thing I'm going to close out on are, speaking of having it both ways, these Epstein files, right? Right. The Epstein files, and the fact that they will not swear in, they won't swear in the duly elected representative. Let's see here.
If Trump believes that if you vote to reopen the government, or is a commitment from the White House and
Oh,
Republicans
yeah,
enough?
no doubt.
I mean,
Mr. President, is a very honest man. And if he says something, man, you could take it to the bank.
So you're saying his word is not enough? Bankruptcy court.
His word?
So what do you need to see? What commitments from? I think we need to see ink on paper. I think we need to see legislation. I think we need to see votes. And I think we need to see these things pass on the floor of the House.
Right. Hold on. I got the wrong clip. I'm sorry about that, y'all. Where's the right clip at? Is it? Okay, hold on. Maybe I didn't pull it up. I see. 2 seconds, and then I'm going to be out. It's the last clip is actually where they're speaking about. Is it this right here? Oh, no, it isn't. Okay. No. Did I not bring in the clip? Well, in any case, it's about the seat that is supposed to be filled, and by the duly elected congresswoman out of Arizona, that now they are delaying or attempting to delay. And again, he's about to go to court over this. MAGA Mike Johnson is about to be sued. And can y'all hear me? Oh, okay, here we go. Yeah, let me just cut that out. And MAGA Mike Johnson is about to be sued over this. It's called taxation without representation. By the way, that's illegal, again, according to the Constitution, And the bottom line is, under no circumstance can you delay. That cannot be your purpose, to delay swearing in of a congressional member, because that would be considered taxation without representation. People pay taxes. They're in a state. They're supposed to have their representatives. And the moment you start giving excuses like MAGA Mike Johnson has given to why you're not going to do it, and he has indeed said he will never do it. He said we would not. We won't, we would not, right? He's claiming that he doesn't have to do it until the shutdown ends. And that is absolutely against the law. That is taxation without representation, because it has nothing to do with Congress. They get their check. They are paid. The shutdown has to do with other branches and other levels of branches of government. It's not even unilateral. So people like Kash Patel, although other FBI agents may not be getting paid, he's getting paid. You see what I mean? There's a hierarchy in this. Right. So just so folks know, it's the same thing with ICE too. Right. Same thing with all federal agencies. Everybody doesn't get paid. Some do, some don't. The higher up the chain you go, you tend to lean towards getting paid. The lower down the chain, you tend to lean towards being furloughed or getting paid back pay. Right. So that's how it works. So on that note, I hope my fellow American citizens get this shit together. When you live outside of the United States, like myself, you do get a different look on what it is to be a citizen, because you realize what it's like to be a minority living abroad, living in different states, what it's like to not be the majority or the popular group in town. Not that we're unpopular, but we're not in control. When you're an American citizen that lives abroad, you're not in control, and you find out what that's like. It's not your political party. See, in Denmark, the Republicans are not in charge in Denmark. The Democrats are not in charge in Denmark. The United States independent parties and all of this, you're not in charge in Denmark. No, we are residents. We have residents in a foreign nation that we, by the way, tend to agree with about a lot of the laws. Otherwise, we wouldn't live here, right? Now, I agree with a lot of the laws. I believe Denmark is a pretty fair society and a good society, right? Overall, That's what I agree with. But when you live outside, for the first time, you get a chance to know that, wait a second, just across our political parties, outside, we can kind of stick together a little bit, especially when it comes to this thing about being American, right? We can kind of honor each other, at least if we have differences. What I found about this MAGA party is that they've kind of stopped that. They've created a situation where Americans can't be Americans anymore, where we have to be so indifferent about and against our own constitutional rights, against our own history, pretty much against what it is to be an American. And that's a strange thing, although there's not many Republicans at all in Denmark, and there's definitely no MAGA supporters. You have Republicans that are like Bush Republicans. You don't have any of them that are like MAGA. That would obviously be a nightmare, because why would you be a MAGA supporting person when you don't even support universal health care? Why would you live in a country where you don't believe everybody should go to school? Like Denmark believes everybody should have access to higher education. Why would you live in a country as a MAGA person where you don't believe everybody should have access to childcare? Why would you live in Denmark if you're a MAGA person? You wouldn't. Your life would be horrible, because you would be doing everything you hate and you say is not good for the United States of America. So you won't find a MAGA supporter in Denmark. You'll find conventional Republicans, more so, which I can get along with and I can respect, by the way. Although you have the right to change your mind. Also, Republicans, people like George Bush, they don't necessarily agree to what their own policies were back then, although they still don't agree with Trump. You see what I'm saying? At all. You see, there's those types. Hence why John Bolton's ass is going to jail when he used to work for Trump. You see, he tried that. Now it's backfired on him. He spoke up for the Constitution, and look at what's going to happen to his ass. But in any case, y'all, I think we covered a lot today. I appreciate everybody for showing up. Thanks for giving me a few days off, because, I just needed the rest. I needed the rest. The weather's been changing over here, and I wanted to make sure my body is ahead of anything that goes on. Grijalva, yes. Exactly. Yeah, that's her name. Exactly. Yeah, Grijalva is the congressional woman's, the congressional member's name, the duly elected. I'm sorry, I'm so terrible at that, at Hispanic names. I may not pronounce them all well, but I do recognize our history together. Spanish is just another colonial language in the in America. We have a few. We have French, because of our history with the French in America. We have Spanish because of our history with the Spanish in America. We have many languages. We have Portuguese because of our history with Portuguese in the Americas, right? And, and this goes back hundreds and hundreds of years, centuries. So on that note, I think the bottom line is she's an American citizen. It's taxation without representation. She is not just herself. She represents her constituency out of Arizona. They pay taxes. They pay taxes that MAGA Mike Johnson benefits from. They help pay his salary. And now the man is denying swearing her in when there is no grounds for that in the Constitution whatsoever. Denying it is called taxation without representation. And as Americans, we all need to be against that. You can't force a political position on someone before you uphold their constitutional right. You see? Your political position is not the Constitution. It does not supersede the Constitution. And MAGA Mike Johnson and Trump, they're hitting at something so unconstitutional, so constitutionally wrong, taxation without representation. That was one of the things that sparked off the war for independence against King George. So as a serious American, you're supposed to know that. If you know your American history, that's supposed to strike you as different. So, yeah, folks, I hope things change. I hope people learn to adapt, to maybe refine their positions on things, maybe not have to be so harsh. Maybe also not just believe everything verbatim Trump says. Trump is a lying ass motherfucker. So is MAGA Mike Johnson, who, you know, is said to lie about a lot of things, you know, I would say. But the more serious things are, in my view, just the fact that he would go against the Constitution right there shows how fucking insane this little dorky ass man thing that claims he's a man is. Like, yo, a lot of these people, they got the nerve to be trying to say the No Kings rally is anti-American. No, motherfucker. You are being anti-American when you are not swearing in duly elected representatives who have constituencies that pay your motherfucking check, bitch. Excuse my language, but I'm really not digging it. But on that note, I'm out, y'all. I appreciate everybody. Once again, let's stay up and keep the conversation going. I'll be back today. I'm off, but for the next 2 days. So I'll be back in the next, I think 8 hours, man. I appreciate y'all. One, click the like button. Click subscribe if you haven't. I appreciate y'all. One.
They want war. Crying babies looking for food. Starvation, the recipe. People subdued. When the people you trust got it in for you. Deceit is the word of the day in every clue. Don't let it go. It's from the days of old. Time is up, but some still do not know. Can I make up my mind? Is it worth the dime? Do I have to take a minute just to make it mine? Life's never fair, but don't listen to the TV. Go out and take a listen to the streets with the people in the slums and the homeless bums with degrees and degrees sitting under a tree. It's not easy in the world for the poor man, the one that brought you to reality. See, they don't want you to know the black sheep, leaving 7 rows to the 12 families all around the globe with an ancient code. Is it really asking a lot to say a death old? Cause we sitting on the earth looking back at extinct, and I'm standing on some ground that's about to sink. I ain't scared for a minute, I ain't about to blink, but I documented for the world what I see and think. Feel we on the call and I feel we on the break. All Congress gonna do is waste paper and ink. Vote or die, you voted and you'll die. You can have it both ways, can't say it's a lie. You can march all you want, but they playing you wrong. They only understand war, it's the same old song. They want war, all they really want is a war. Diversionary tactic to make the big score. The diamonds in the morning, you know they want more, but they wanna keep you low, so they manifest the war. War, all they really want is a war. Diversionary tactic to make the big score. The diamonds in the morning, you know they want more, but they wanna keep you low, so they manifest the war. Like a lotus coming out of the mud with colors, I create envy in those with power but jealous. I unify the poor with my song, the hell with the others. Descended the way they treat indigenous brothers. Cause I understand we link forever. They try to hate us even though that we keep it together. I'm not talking about controlling the air or the weather. I'm talking about maintaining the truth, the high endeavor. A rebel drops bombs in the midst of trouble. The free world counterattack and now there's double. But nature gets the shit in a way to settle. If you stop the machines for a minute you might hear, but they won't cause the TV's whisper in the ear. And capitalism has eyes that don't tear, and they cloud up and get crazy and won't stare. And like an ad, it's hard to get an ass to listen. Living like this is like living in prison. It's hard to keep hope when you're living in prison. The spiritual thoughts, so yes, the mental prison. The outside, yes, it's got to get through. Something's gotta die, so something here can live. Your life is nothing if you got nothing to give. Keeping the spiritual, yes, disguised as religion. Controlling your mind, the mental prison. They want war, all they really want is a war. Diversionary tactic to make the big score. The diamonds in the morning, you know they want more, but they wanna keep you low, so they manifest the war. War, all they really want is a war. Diversionary tactic to make the big score. The diamonds in the morning, you know they want more, but they wanna keep you low, so they manifest the war.
Release the Epstein files. Diversionary tactic to make the big score. Yo, peace, y'all.